What's wrong with Everdell? Why am I targeting Everdell as the game that I want to find alternatives to? There are so many specific gripes or like even minor complaints about the game, and I want to share some other options, some things that address a few of the game's weaknesses. So what is the criteria for games that are on this list? Well, first of all, the only games that I'm going to share are games that address a specific weakness about Everdell. I could just make this 5 games that I like a lot, but then why would I call the video 5 games that are better than Everdell? It has to address a specific thing about Everdell that might make the game different or worth considering. Secondly, it has to be a game that's available for purchase right now. So any games that are out of print, I just left them off the list. But speaking of being available to purchase, if you are interested in any of my recommendations, can I ask that you use the affiliate links in the description? I am building a web app, and if you want to know more about that project, then you can check out the link up above or also in the description. But basically, using those affiliate links helps generate the access to the API that I use for that web app, and you can learn more about that down there. It just helps out a lot, so thank you for that. Thirdly, in the criteria, it has to be a game that's approximately in the same category. So I'm not going to choose any card games. I'm not going to choose any cooperative games or games that are like 4-hour role-playing games, anything like that. This is a kind of mid-level complexity competitive game, and so all of the games on my list are comparable in that regard. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The first gripe that I have about Everdell is really the theme, and it's a gorgeous game. It has these lovely components, but really the theme is mostly restricted to the artwork itself. Like when you take away the tree and when you take away the board, Everdell at its heart is really just a card game. You're trading resources in order to buy cards to help you get more resources to buy more cards, and the person who has the most points on cards wins. Like a lot of card games, it has a lot of luck involved. Oftentimes you're waiting for the right card to be pulled out of the deck, and then many other card games, and Everdell included, lack meaning. And really, the theme of Everdell, which is animals building a city, doesn't really come through in the game. It comes through in the artwork for sure. It definitely comes through in the components. But why does a husband get 3 fruit in order to be constructed, whereas a shopkeeper, which is in here somewhere, takes innkeeper. This one has 1 fruit. Like, why? This is a badger. Doesn't badgers eat more than a mouse? I don't know. A game that has a lot more meaning involved, in fact, a significant amount of meaning, is the game Suburbia, which has been around for a while. It's not as new and as flashy as Everdell. In Suburbia, you are also building a city, and everything about Suburbia makes a lot of sense. Like, if you put a junkyard next to a residential area, that's going to affect your reputation in a negative way. And if you build a stadium, then you're going to have more people move to your city or higher population. Like, things really make sense. And not only do they make sense when you build in your own city, your actions make sense in how they affect other people's city. It takes careful planning, and even though there's a lot of text on cards that you have to read, much like these have text on cards, really. I mean, there's a lot of reading in this game. Suburbia has a lot of reading too, but it's there's much more intuition involved. Industry gives you more income, whereas residential housing gives you more people. Like, these things make sense. Suburbia, really solid game. However, not as new, not as flashy as Everdell. So if you're looking for something that also has a strong theme, strong meaning, but a little bit newer, a little flashier, I recommend Tang Garden. Tang Garden came out in 2020. It's a stunning game. Now, it doesn't have as much meaning as Suburbia, but it still makes a lot of sense. So basically, in Tang Garden, you're building a garden, and the ultimate objective, at least I like to think, is the garden needs to satisfy the people who visit that garden. Now, in terms of what the people's tastes are, that's a little arbitrary. The hermit likes stones. He likes to look at rocks. Why does the hermit like to look at rocks? Why does the emperor like to look at dragon artwork? Like, I don't know, people like what they like, but when you're doing it, you're like, okay, I'm doing this because I want to satisfy the Empress or, whatever it is. The way that things connect makes a lot of sense. The decorations, like you have to grow the garden in order to create space for the decorations to go. And if the decorations don't have space, then you can't place the decorations. And so you're always asking yourself, how can I set up the board in order to place the decorations that I need in order to get the highest score? It has a lot more intention behind it, and I mean, it's stunning. I would even say prettier than Everdell. Oh, I mean, Everdell's impressive, right? So those are two games with excellent themes, excellent meaning. Let's talk a little bit about the element of luck in Everdell. So in Everdell, there are some ways that luck balances out, but unfortunately, with a card game like this, you spend a lot of time waiting for the right card to come out. And I've definitely played this game and it felt like, gosh, you know what? Like, the cards that you had were awesome. The cards that I had sucked. I couldn't have won. It was impossible to win. They just bad luck in this game. And that can spoil a game for me. So I like to have a game that has more strategy and less luck. Now, I do have a list. I mean, I think Suburbia is another game that really emphasizes strategy over luck. But for a game that is beautiful and pure strategy, check out Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, you are planting trees in a forest, and the trees have to grow and spread their seed in order to generate more trees, and then all the while the sun is going around the forest, and you have to grow trees in the sunlight in order to help them grow more and generate more energy, which you use to plant more seeds to grow more trees. And so you're competing with other people's trees and their shadows. And so, I mean, the idea that, like, you're a small tree next to a big tree, and when the sun's behind it, the light doesn't shine on you, makes perfect sense. But there's absolutely no dice rolling. There's no cards involved. It's a game of pure strategy, which I really enjoy, but it isn't always easy to find people who are willing to play a purely strategic game. Photosynthesis can actually almost be like depressing, because you can tell when you're getting crushed in Photosynthesis. It's completely a strategic game. I really like games where the scoring takes place at the end of the game, and you kind of like, it's a surprise to see whether or not you've won. Which actually, by the way, Everdell kind of has that too, where you kind of have a sense of who's doing better, but you don't really know the score until the end of the game. And I think that's a good thing about games. It can make it really enjoyable. But anyway, this is my favorite game to lose, by the way. And it's also the highest rated game on Board Game Geek. But the game is Concordia, and 2014. It's been around for a while. Again, it's more of a Euro, so it doesn't have as pretty of artwork, but it's a much more involved game. And actually, another thing about Everdell is because each person's turn is pretty independent from everyone else, you spend a lot of time waiting and not so much time paying attention to what other people are actually doing. You kind of have your own plan. Concordia is a lot more involved. And the way the cards get played out, timing matters a lot. There's less of a engine building element like Everdell has, but what I really like is in Concordia, you have a hand of cards. You're holding your entire deck, I guess. You play your cards, and for each turn, you can't play your cards again until you play the card that lets you pick up all your cards. So the timing of when you pick up your cards to replay a card from your hand, and also the way that the cards are played and affected by other people. So you've got a board that you're sharing, and people can kind of interfere with your plan. So you have to anticipate, and it's a much more involved game in that sense. So that's Concordia. Now, lastly, a game that that solves like one more problem with Everdell. And actually, it's the only game except for Photosynthesis that addresses this. Oh no, actually Concordia too. Well, here, the complaint is there's a lot of reading in this. And if you want to play a family game and you have younger kids, kids can be bogged down by the amount of reading on all the text, or they can say, what does this card do? What does that card do? And that's not fun for the younger members of the family. So a game that has a strategy that is accessible to everyone and has little to no reading involved at all, also very pretty, very attractive though, is Takenoko. Takenoko has been around since 2011, so a bit of an older game, but I mean, you've got a panda, you've got a gardener, you've got the little bamboo shoots, the colors. It's a beautiful game, really accessible for all ages. It doesn't have the same complexity as Everdell, which can be a good thing. If you like complex games, I probably wouldn't recommend it, but it's a great one to solve the problem of, you like Everdell, but how can you play a game with your kids who really can't understand what the post office does? So that's Takenoko. 5 games that solve some of the gripes about Everdell. Not necessarily perfect games, not necessarily better than Everdell, but if there are a few things about Everdell that you're like, I don't really like that so much, definitely check out any of those 5. And again, the links in the description. If you would check those out, that helps me a whole lot. Check out the perfectboardgame.com if you'd like to look more into how I rate games and to see how your game is rated and to even change those weights as well. So if you like this video, I make videos all the time about board games, especially board games for families. So if that's your thing, go ahead and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.